The next day, Lennox arrives at the bar disguised as Mage Van. As he steps in, Dylan warmly greets him, referring to him as his partner. However, Lennox remains somewhat distant and cold, questioning Dylan's assumption about their partnership. Dylan tries to be friendly, expressing his desire to befriend a famous person. When Lennox inquires about his fame, Dylan starts explaining Jenny's excitement regarding Van's performance at the Crimber's mercenary office. But before he can finish, Jenny interrupts abruptly by smacking his head with the menu card, causing him to stumble and fall to the ground. She then addresses Mage Van, reassuring him not to pay attention to Dylan's foolishness, and asks about his experience working with Crimgar. Lennox responds that it was relatively easy compared to facing the monster Croquet, and fighting the scavenger higher-ups wasn't particularly challenging either. Jenny then asks whether the assassin was a retired soldier and if he was from District 51, indicating that his skill levels might be predictable. Dylan intervenes, asserting that not all scavenger members are weak. Many have been underestimated and proved formidable adversaries. Lennox then asks if he means the top executives are strong. Jenny concurs, stating that there are many variations among the higher-ups, especially those from District 20. She emphasizes that Van should avoid getting involved with them, and he agrees, assuring her that he will keep that in mind. Jenny then reveals that he has become famous for his recent job, mentioning an increased influx of customer requests for the Lightning Mage. She hands him a diary, informing him that she had sorted the requests that recently came in so he could choose one he liked, and with a disgusted expression, she then hands him the blood sample of that monstrous assassin that he asked Dre to deliver. Lennox is intrigued to see the diary filled with requests for assistance, indicating a high demand for a skilled mage. Jenny expresses her desire to work together for a long time and offers him discounts on her fees. Dylan anxiously intervenes, expressing concern about favoritism, but Jenny swiftly silences him with a gesture and doesn't pay much attention to him. Meanwhile, the bartender presents an expensive drink to Lennox as a compliment, which he appreciates. However, when Dylan orders the same drink for himself, Jenny sarcastically demands an exorbitant sum of 100,000 self for the drink, leaving Dylan feeling ditched. Later, back at his home, Lennox finds himself vomiting in the bathroom. He wipes his face, feeling the effects of the alcohol and exhaustion. He contemplates that he's left with no alternative but to rid himself of the alcohol to reduce the potential side effects caused by Viper. After a while, he sits beside his bed, acknowledging his fragile body and desire to rest. However, he's reminded of the diary given by Jenny. Reflecting on her words about overlapping quest dates, he realizes he must choose quickly to avoid rejecting all other requests. Consequently, he begins evaluating the requests and discovers a diverse array among the entries. He notices several from mercenary offices, experimental subject testing at laboratories, and intriguingly, even a request from the scavenger group. Lennox finds it crazy and wonders if they don't care that he worked for their opponents. However, he deliberates that Jenny couldn't have been aware of his past affiliations. She must have kept it here on purpose. After assessing the requests, he excludes the recommendations from individual mercenary offices and gangs. He also excludes ones with near deadlines and wonders what's left. A request from a pharmaceutical company, AM&AC, catches his attention. He then accesses the site on his phone, which he has been visiting often lately, an online auction site run by the city government. Out of all the items listed, he has been keeping his eye on Starnia Pharma's first-class miracle drug, Stimonia, that worth 100 million cell. It's close to an industrial product, and it is the one that perks one up a bit. However, he is in no condition to be picky. He is desperate for a ray of hope that can heal his penalty-ridden body. He takes a deep sigh and decides to take Amane's quest, acknowledging that he might not get the miracle drug. Still, he might get a hint that would help him solve the sleeping pill problem. Turning off the light, Lennox lays on his bed with all his attention on the phone, reading an article headline detailing the forthcoming visit of Sovereign Dominion Philinum's delegation to Balkan. A week passes, and in return for accepting AMNAC's request immediately, Lennox finds himself engaged in pursuing wanted criminals, a task designed to assess the magical prowess of the support sniper. Despite the fugitive's attempts to flee, Lennox remains relentless. Soon enough, he activates the aim assist technique, infusing his bullet with mana, and expertly aims, hitting the criminal's leg with precision. As the fugitive stumbles and falls to the ground, Lennox approaches him with a stern expression, remarking that the technique indeed proves its effectiveness. With confidence, he holds his firearm, considering it a useful tool until he reaches the pinnacle of magical prowess. Taking aim, he fires at the incapacitated criminal before moving forward, reflecting on the limitations of his current abilities. He acknowledges that while his spells enhance his speed and force, there is room for improvement, particularly with support magic. Later, Lennox arrives at the bar to announce his finalized quest choice, but is interrupted by Jenny's keen intuition as she astutely senses his decision for choosing AMNAC. Urging him to hand it over quickly, she emphasizes the urgency of the situation. Perplexed by her awareness, Lennox hands her the file and wonders how she knew about it. Jenny calmly reminds him that it's the only available quest that hasn't expired as of that day, and also that he seemed interested in medicine. She urges him to wait a minute, revealing that someone from AMAC will be arriving soon, and then turns around to contact the pharmaceutical company. Meanwhile, a man approaches Lennox, pondering if he's Jenny's new customer. Wondering how the man knows him, Lennox listens as the man remarks that Van is gaining attention as a renowned lightning mage, and there's talk circulating about him being a bounty hunter fixated on cash rewards. Reflecting on how he's captured numerous wanted criminals for monetary gain, Lennox acknowledges that it makes sense for them to say that. The man clarifies that he doesn't mean it negatively and highlights that within the city, individuals typically end up with a bounty on their heads for two reasons. Either they're inconsequential individuals who no one would bother about if they disappeared, or they're powerful enough not to worry about having a reward placed on them. Lennox considers the contrasting ends of the spectrum and becomes curious about the man's identity. Unexpectedly, the man hurls his business card towards him. It catches Lennox off guard for a while, but he manages to catch it. Observing the man's throw, Lennox expresses amazement at the man's agility and pink aura emanating from his hand and remarks that he hadn't anticipated encountering someone with supernatural powers. The man introduces himself as Sebastian and reveals that he undertakes work similar to Jenny's. Lennox studies Sebastian's card and ponders that he doesn't sense mana, speculating if Sebastian specializes in psychological abilities. Lennox asks if Sebastian is a telekinesis user, to which Sebastian agrees, asserting that it should be apparent, suggesting he has already demonstrated this ability to Lennox. Sebastian then grabs a malt bottle, stating that it must be true that Lennox went somewhere foreign to train before coming here. He gently tosses the bottle towards Jenny, who initially thought Sebastian was here for a drink. She asks why he's approaching her client, asserting that it will not be fun for long if he keeps this up. Sebastian sarcastically tells Jenny not to be overly upset, acknowledging that he did give Lennox his business card, but he is here to provide her with something. As he places his hand on a bag, Jenny anxiously wonders what it is. She is taken aback to find its conscription, as she thought there were over 2 months left until the Philanon delegation visits. She sternly wonders how she is getting this already. Sebastian acknowledges that it sure is rare that it's this early and mentions the rumors that a city council member is pushing this agenda hard. Meanwhile, Lennox reflects that he heard about this on the news yesterday when the city government issued a call-up order to all independent businesses. He wonders if it was because the Philanom delegation was expected to visit. Considering the looks on their faces, he realizes it must be a big deal. While leaving, Sebastian greets Lennox, telling him to give him a call whenever he feels like talking about different types of jobs. As they shake hands, he assures Lennox that he will provide him with rewards different from those that Jenny gives him. Later, as he departs, Jenny acknowledges that Sebastian is good with his words when dealing with rich people and business owners, suggesting Lennox to visit him if he wants to take on individual requests. Lennox wonders if she won't stop him, to which Jenny retorts whether the customer listens to a business owner, pleading not to leave them soon, to which Lennox agrees. Soon, the man arrives there pondering if it's Jenny's bar, which catches their attention, and Jenny says that man to follow them. She takes them to a separate room for discussion and introduces herself and Mage Van. The man reciprocates the introduction, expressing pleasure in meeting them, and reveals that he is AMAC sales manager Lewin Sage. Lewin then hands Lennox the mission details, asking if he can assume that Mage Van knows the context of the requests since he accepted it, and Lennox responds that he did read the description. The man informs them that AMAC is developing a tranquilizer with small-scale crowdfunding, with the idea that once the development is complete, it will sell enough to bring in profit. However, the problem is that a district representative from the headquarters used their connections with a gang to try and steal AMAC patent rights. Lennox then ponders what he is supposed to do precisely, to which Lewin asserts that he will tell him something first. He shares a secret that the public doesn't know, but the truth is the tranquilizer development is already complete. He said they would send a sample to the patent office before the district representative found out, but the information was leaked. Van anxiously wonders if there's a spy, to which the man concurs, confirming suspicions of espionage and hands him the address of the location where they were located. Lewin then tells Mage Van that he needs to retrieve the samples they hid in storage and deliver them to the patent office without anyone finding out. Lewin feigns a fake laugh, emphasizing that he will leave it to Mage Van. However, Lennox asks the man if he wants to give him a job, then he should be honest. This directness causes Lewin to become visibly nervous and tremble as he hesitantly asks for clarification about what Van means by his statement. Lennox suspects that Lewin might be pretending to be unaware, realizing that simply submitting the sample won't solve the underlying issue. Meanwhile, Jenny questions Lewin about the assurance that Van will encounter the gang during the mission. Lennox reinforces this by asking if Amek expects him to hide and take no further action beyond delivering the sample, expressing skepticism about this approach. It becomes evident that Lewin appears to be intentionally withholding information. The situation becomes more straightforward to Lennox, indicating that it's apparent that Amek isn't seeking someone to run errands. Instead, they require a more militaristic approach. Confused by the expectation that he should solely deal with the gang while retrieving the samples, Lennox wonders if Amek truly believes he'd comply with such a directive. He realizes that the mission demands more than retrieving samples and suggests a deeper involvement with potential confrontations. Jenny discusses with Mage that they should renegotiate the reward and prompts Lewin to contact Amek's superiors about how much they can offer Mr. Mage over here and motivate him to confront the gang if he encounters one. She gives him time to contact his higher-ups and takes Van back to the bar, informing Lewin that they will be downstairs. Jenny tells Van that the company lied, but she finds it rather amusing, suggesting they were trying to save money. Lennox anxiously wonders how difficult she believes the task would be. Jenny retorts that it probably won't be too hard since the gang may not be that big, estimating they might number in the hundreds and are likely on par with the scavengers, except for their mixed-blood leader. Lennox asserts that he will need more reward money, while Jenny assures him she can raise it by at least 10 million sel. Soon, Lewin approaches them in the bar, nodding in agreement, signaling his acceptance of all their conditions. Later, Lewin drives the Mage to the targeted destination, mentioning that it's a bit late as the others are probably already there. Ben ponders about the others and Lewin reveals that the people they have to protect the storage, claiming there won't be as many as the gang, but they should still be helpful. Lennox speculates that perhaps they hadn't intended to leave him to confront the gang alone. However, he remains uncertain about how much aid these hired protectors will offer. Lennox, realizing the importance of gathering information about medicine, questions Lewin about Jenny's assertion that they tried to take advantage of him despite understanding the value of his work. With trembling hands, Lewin responds, attempting to clarify that it's a misunderstanding. Lennox notices Lewin's sweaty face and decides to probe further. He asks if there are other samples in storage, perhaps something commonplace like melatonin. Lewin quickly agrees, revealing the presence of samples of other medicines and mentioning that their boss previously utilized these. Lennox thinks to himself that it is great as he needed those. After a while, they arrive at their targeted location, District 54 Amex storage, where a few individuals were standing outside. Lewin informs Lennox that they have reached their destination, noting the presence of most of the anticipated parties. Before that man exits the car, Lennox halts him, asserting that he should not leave yet. Suddenly, one of those individuals firmly knocks on the window, asking Lewin if he is from Amnak. Upon Lewin's nervous affirmation, the person emphatically pounds on the window, urging him to open the door and come out, which catches him off guard. The giant man vocally expresses dissatisfaction, stating that this differs from what they agreed on, questioning what they should do with just 10 people. Lennox confronts Lewin, accusing him of failing to meet their expectations. In response, Lewin abruptly apologizes. However, he brings out his viper and starts consuming it. And with a resolute demeanor, Lennox tells Lewin to step out of the car, to which Lewin hesitates. However, Lennox steps out of the car, contemplating that he will prove his worth of the pay. Lennox draws the gaze of the individuals hired by Anak Pharmaceuticals, who exasperatedly shout at him, questioning his identity and demanding him to screw off so they can converse with Lewin. Sensing their loudness as disruptive, Lennox calmly requests they lower their voices, further provoking their ire. One hefty individual asserts that even Van is trapped and will be unable to escape once targeted by the gang. Lennox acknowledges their fear and frustration, empathizing with their predicament, yet he has no intention of engaging in a conversation or resolving the issue amicably. The hefty individual abruptly lunges to assault Lennox, but he effortlessly sidesteps the attack and retaliates with the bolt maneuver. This unexpected display shocks everyone as they realize that Amak has hired a mage for the task. While Lennox instructs them to quiet down, he acknowledges their knowledge about the gang but deems it futile to dwell on it in this setting. Suddenly, another individual yells at him to step aside before he beats him up. The red-haired individual asserts that being a mage doesn't inherently make Van superior to them. He retaliates by unleashing a fire-based maneuver, emphasizing that everyone might be perplexed, but not all mages possess remarkable abilities. He insinuates that if Van has been recruited for this task, it's likely because he was expelled from a magic tower for having insufficient mana. This assertion resonates with the others, who find the explanation plausible. Meanwhile, Lennox contemplates encountering two individuals with supernatural skills in a single day. He recognizes that the red-haired guy is a flame user, a pyrokinetic, noting the variability in manifestations and strengths of such abilities. While pyrokinetics are known for their potent and straightforward ability, Lennox deduces that given the individual's affiliation with this specific group, he is probably not that strong. Lennox provokes the red-haired guy, sarcastically suggesting that if he plans to beat him up and turn the car into ash. This remark makes Lewin tremble in shock, realizing he's the only other person in the car. The red-haired man denies Lennox's insinuation, asserting that a low-level mage like him is already a burden, and he will turn Lennox into ashes too. With that, he unleashes his flame maneuver and ferociously lunges to assault Lennox. Meanwhile, Lennox contemplates the futility of resolving conflicts with mere words in their line of work, acknowledging that power holds more weight than 1,000 words. With this in mind, Lennox deflects the fire punch maneuver of the red-haired guy with his bare hands, surprising him. Absorbing the flames, Lennox redirects the energy and launches it back at the attacker, engulfing him in his own fiery blast. The sudden turn of events startles everyone around as the red-haired guy burns in flames. Despite being consumed by the fire, Lennox remains remarkably calm. He states that not all pyrokinetics possess resistance to fire, and the red-haired guy tearfully apologizes and begs for Lennox's aid, pleading to be saved. Lennox hurls him aside and contemplates his waning grip as he struggles to hold on much longer. Others rush to extinguish the fire and rescue red-haired guy. One of them warns that it's critical to prevent the fire from reaching the storage, while others shout to bring water and tackle the flames. Meanwhile, Lennox turns to Lewin, emphasizing that the situation won't improve if he stays there. He suggests that Lewin should leave, and the man abruptly heeds his suggestion. After Lewin departs, Lennox enters the warehouse, reflecting on the pharmaceutical company's sole requirement to bring the new sample to the patent office. Determined, Lennox resolves to complete the task by the morning 2 days from now. Anticipating enduring another day and a half until the deadline, he braces himself for the challenges ahead. Retrieving the sample, Lennox examines it and realizes he could easily abscond with it. However, he acknowledges that such an action contradicts Amek's intentions. Tucking the samples into his blazer, he contemplates the possibility of a confrontation with the gang. Understanding that if it comes to that, he'll need to decisively eliminate them all. Immediately after stepping out of the warehouse, the team members inquire Lennox about their next move. With a sigh, Lennox realizes they are unaware of the plan. He asks how many of them are present, and the giant man responds that, including the red-haired individual who just woke up, they total are 15 in number. Lennox commands them to split into 3 groups and patrol around the storage. He instructs them to monitor the entrance closely and report to him if anything seems off. Moving around the area, Lennox observes the chaotic state of the place and presumes that the gang never found it due to the mess. He notices that the walls are tall, making it difficult for intruders to get over them, but they appear to be worn down. He decides to employ the Claymore maneuver, a trap magic that explodes when certain conditions are met, significantly damaging those caught in its radius. However, its range is small, making it unsuitable for large groups. Considering this, Lennox decides to change the conditions. Instead of exploding when people are nearby, he sets it to blast when pressure is added to the wall. In exchange for lessening the damage, he increases the range. After successfully employing the maneuver around the wall, he proceeds to secure other vulnerable areas in a similar manner. Out of the blue, the red-haired guy approaches Lennox and humbly kneels, expressing regret for their earlier altercation. He claims that he was out of his mind and assures Lennox that he will never speak out of line again. When Lennox remarks that there is no need to apologize, the guy anxiously ponders what he should do to earn the mage's forgiveness and let him live. Lennox realizes that the red-haired guy assumes he will be killed after this job, although Lennox never intended such an outcome. However, he decides not to disclose this to him. In response to the guy's persistent apologies, Lennox questions if he approached him privately because he didn't want the others to witness him begging for forgiveness. Keeping his head down, the red-haired guy continues to apologize. Seeing his remorse, Lennox places his hand onto his shoulder and tells him that he will grant him a chance to make it up. The red-haired guy, still visibly remorseful, asks Lennox what he must do. Lennox reveals that they will be hosting guests later that night and explains the task to set fire to their shoulders, akin to his earlier attempt with Lennox. He assures him that once this task is completed, he will be relieved of any further obligations. The red-haired guy instantly agrees. Later, inside the warehouse while inhaling the Viper, Lennox realizes that he doesn't have many of these left. He contemplates the potential difficulty of dealing with the gang if they split into numerous groups. In such a scenario, he decides he will need to stall for time with his gun if things become too challenging. Suddenly, a commotion catches his attention. Before heading outside, he unleashes the mana manipulation maneuver, allowing him to sense within a 2 kilometers radius. Detecting the approach of numerous adversaries, Lennox notes that among them, 2 are emitting high heat signatures, and there are approximately 150 in total. Maintaining a composed demeanor, Lennox steps outside. One of the team members anxiously informs him about their imminent arrival. Lennox calmly acknowledges that he's aware. He contemplates that they can't all be mana users and speculates whether they might be arriving in cars, considering the speed of their approach. His speculation proves accurate as they soon arrive at the storage facility. Meanwhile, an AMAC team member urges everyone to get ready to confront them. The glare of the car's headlights overwhelms their vision, causing the team members to nervously turn to Lennox for guidance. Sensing their hesitation, Lennox realizes that he needs to instill some inner peace in them. He commands his comrades to guard the entrance and assures them that he will take care of the rest. Observing the red-haired guy positioned at the forefront, Lennox assumes that the earlier threat has had an effect, but he wonders why the adversaries aren't taking any action. Suddenly, the rest of the adversaries attempt to barge in from the backside, catching the mercenaries off guard. A mighty truck hits the wall back-to-back, prompting Lennox to wonder if they plan to break down all the walls. Grinning sarcastically, Lennox remarks that it confirms who will make it back alive. As the monster truck hits the wall again, an explosion erupts, engulfing the vehicle in flames. It hurtles above the mercenaries and crashes onto the ground amid the chaos. Lennox becomes bewildered, contemplating that while he did reinforce the Claymore maneuver, it shouldn't have been powerful enough for the explosion to extend so far. However, as he observes the burning truck, he notices the fuel spilling from the vehicle and realizes that it isn't ordinary, it's different. Grinning sarcastically, Lennox realizes that the distinct fuel had strengthened the explosion. However, soon, the mercenaries notice the rest of the monster trucks attempting to barge in through the wall, only to be engulfed in flames. Meanwhile, Lennox remarks that they're paying the price for rashly attacking before figuring out their enemies. He notices two guys standing firmly amidst the chaos and wonders if they are the ones with the high heat signatures he detected earlier. Lennox realizes that the long-haired guy is a mage and contemplates that this is the third time he has come across a fellow mage. Recalling his encounters, Lennox remembers the first mage he encountered was Professor Eris Richelin, and the second was that scavenger's detection-type mage who he found rather disappointing given their affiliation. However, he speculates that this mage might be different, and he wonders if he is leading the gang to gain control of the situation. Lennox then employs his elusive mana strands and finds out that 10 cars are destroyed, leaving approximately 100 people remaining. Lennox then utilizes resonance voice magic, urging the adversaries to question how long they will stand there and wait, provoking them to come in, stating that he is sure they have something to discuss. Meanwhile, the adversaries' underlings wonder where that voice is coming from. Offended, Guile, the vice leader of the opponent's group, commands his underlings to head in. Meanwhile, Lennox urgently instructs an AMAC mercenary to relay a message to his comrades to close their eyes and shoot once the opponents are inside. In response, the mercenary anxiously ponders the reason behind the directive. Lennox asserts that there is no time to explain, and the mercenary abruptly heeds his command. The mercenary relays Mage Van's message that they must close their eyes while shooting the opponents as they enter the storage. Lennox then activates the Flux Light magic maneuver, which emanates radiant light, leaving the adversaries unable to see due to the brightness. With this strategic move, Lennox shields his fellow mercenaries, allowing them to unleash fire on the adversaries simultaneously. The red-haired guy lunges and assaults most enemies with his flame maneuver, declaring that he will burn anyone who tries to run away. Lennox contemplates that using another spell might reveal that he is a mage, but he resolves to continue attacking anyway. He wields chain lightning to knock down adversaries and leverages his allies' relentless barrage of bullets to gain the upper hand in the clash. His attention is then diverted to the opponent's leaders, who stand calmly amidst the chaos. He realizes that he needs to deal with them. Conversely, the opponent's leader, Guile, gazes at Lennox and asks Mage Grime why he never mentioned someone like him. Grime responds that he didn't know either and assumes that AMAC can afford that kind of mage. While they are engrossed in wondering about AMAC's mage's true identity, they are taken aback to see that amid the chaos, Lennox is smiling. Guile laughs in surprise and asks Lennox if he has gone insane, to which Lennox ponders why they aren't worried about their dying subordinates instead. Guile laughs and retorts that he doesn't care as they are just disposable trash. He states that they can die there for all he cares and adds that it's about time he let go of such burdens and flew away. Lennox steps backward into the warehouse, with the two adversary leaders trailing behind. The purple-haired mage urges his companion to stop the nonsense. However, Guile smirks, dismissing it, and asks what's wrong with a little conversation. He confidently states that Lennox will die anyway. Guile's irresponsible response irritates Grime, and he asserts that they must reconsider his employment if he acts like that. Meanwhile, with their conversation, Lennox realizes that the mage isn't from the gang. He assumes that a leader who doesn't care about his team is on the mage's side for money. Guile becomes enraged by Lennox's calm demeanor, deeming him an arrogant bastard for snickering like he's insane. Abruptly, he decides to get rid of Lennox to find the sample, to which Grime concurs, stating there's no need to stall for time. The purple-haired mage then conjures barrier magic with his staff. However, Lennox discerns his plan to block off the escape routes, and he can't let that happen. He swiftly retrieves his gun and shatters the magic with his mana-imbued bullet. This unexpected turn of events catches the mage off guard, while Guile mocks Grime, remarking that despite Lennox appearing weak, he managed to catch the mage off guard, signaling a lapse in his defenses. The purple-haired mage yells in frustration, pondering how Lennox dares to block his magic. Grime scolds Guile, asking if he doesn't know the basics of battling beside a mage as he is supposed to defend him. However, Guile continues to mock him, questioning if he's scared of a simple gun, sarcastically emphasizing that Lennox hasn't even used magic yet. Guile tells Grime that Lennox is a lightning and light mage, so he should know that their magic is super conspicuous. At that moment, Lennox realizes why they are so relaxed despite being in front of him. As per Lennox, magic dealing with light is powerful and very noticeable whenever one casts a spell. Most skills are conspicuous to cast, so anyone skilled enough can prepare for it. When Lennox remains composed, Guile assumes it looks like he's going to do something but remains unfazed and threatens to rip him apart. Lennox reflects on his conversation with Jenny, recalling when he asked her about the difficulty of the quest. She informed him that it would be easy, except for the leader Guile being the rare mixed blood type. Lennox acknowledges that he knew Guile's bloodthirst was rather obvious and asks himself if it's time to begin. Lennox shouts at Guile, declaring that he didn't realize because it's dark, Guile is just a piece of shit mud. Furious, Guile demands to know what Lennox just said. In response, Lennox pinches his nose, claiming to detect the foul odor emanating from Guile's fur, cynically questioning whether he ever bothers to bathe. These comments deeply provoke Guile, and he instantly morphs himself into a monstrous werewolf, menacingly declaring that he will tear Lennox apart. Lennox acknowledges that werewolves are born with wild instincts and the bodies of beasts. Their ferocity and strength are unmatched. But this werewolf is different. He notices that it can't even control the saliva dripping from its mouth, its claws digging curve into his flesh, and he can see knits of his skin where the hair is gone. Lennox deduces that this aberration stems from the creature being a mixed blood werewolf. Meanwhile, Guile issues a warning, cautioning that Lennox should not assume a peaceful death. However, Lennox remains unfazed and confidently remarks that it must be challenging for Guile to maintain control, noting the stutter in his speech. He commands Guile, the werewolf, to come at him instantly, as he won't be able to think for long in that kind of state. As the wolf lunges at him, it is entrapped in the Claymore maneuver which Lennox implanted earlier. Though the wolf manages to shatter a layer of that maneuver, it is instantly trapped in another layer, catching the mage off guard. At the same time, Lennox grins knowingly, a reaction anticipated since he had deployed 5 shields capable of temporarily deflecting heavy weaponry. He presumes that the adversaries had not expected his ability to block all their attacks simultaneously. Subsequently, Lennox initiates the aim assistance maneuver and fires a mana-imbued bullet, causing injury to the wolf and forcefully propelling it aside. Despite having transformed into a werewolf, Guile begins trembling with fear, prompting Lennox to ponder whether he is panicking after only a single attack. Lennox contemplates that once he starts something, he has to finish it. Considering that he can't lose the upper hand, he unleashes the Thunder Calling maneuver to overpower the werewolf. Meanwhile, Mage Grime seems flustered, and Lennox contemplates that he thought the mage would intervene while fighting with the werewolf. He wonders if Grime has been casting a spell all this time and assumes that he must have prepared a good one since he has been given much time. The mage raises his staff, which emanates bright light. However, Lennox discerns that it might look like a ray of light, but it's a spell that casts a strong shockwave. He realizes it's a shock-type magic that was pretty popular in Game World 2.0. Lennox reflects that this shockwave attack is not complicated at all and easy to learn, however, it is intense and visibly intimidating. With Grime poised to unleash an attack on everything around, Lennox cannot allow him to wreak havoc. He swiftly employs his magic, seizing control of Grime's mana flow. Lennox redirects the shockwave toward the ceiling and surprises the mage by diverting the attack's direction. The mage bursts into laughter and confidently declares that Lennox utilizes an artifact, claiming he had known this from the moment he laid eyes on him. He accuses Lennox of being aligned with a pharmaceutical company and insinuates that there's no feasible way Lennox could possess such immense power without external aid. Laughing loudly, he asserts that Lennox must have obtained a powerful artifact and declares that he won't be fooled by it. He insists that Lennox must have depleted his inferior mana at this stage and asserts that it's now his turn to take charge. Amidst this, Lennox discerns that the mage attempts to catch him off guard. He ponders whether the mage is merely deluding himself into believing that Lennox is relying on an artifact despite witnessing Lennox's actions against Guile. Noticing telltale signs in the mage's demeanor, such as trembling pupils and beads of cold sweat on his forehead, it becomes evident that the mage is anxious. Lennox grasps that Grime is starting to doubt his initial assumption due to witnessing Lennox's capabilities firsthand, causing those doubts to linger in the back of his mind. However, Grime is still uncertain, and that's why he's in a state of fear. Lennox concludes that the person before him is an idiot who can't trust his senses and judgments. Lennox firmly states that he no longer needs to listen to Grime and promptly unleashes the Shadow Raid maneuver. The maneuver leaves the mage bewildered as dark mana envelops him, binding his arms and legs in its powerful grip. The intense force of the dark mana is so overwhelming that it severs Grime's hand, which falls to the ground along with the staff he is holding. Overwhelmed with excruciating pain, Grime cries out loudly and collapses to his knees in agony. The mage anxiously gazes at Lennox, and Lennox realizes that Grime is probably wondering how he can do this. He reveals that he had been preparing this skill from the moment they entered the storage. The common Shadow-type magic, Shadow Raid, is the most discreet skill and works in the darkest depths, but it can only control the user's shadow and takes a very long time to cast. However, inside this dark storage unit, such hindrances are nullified, and it helped that Grime was so sure that Lennox was a lightning mage. Lennox contemplates that because of this, Grime didn't suspect anything. Turning to Grime, Lennox says that he anticipated a fierce battle, which was rather bland. He then brandishes his gun at the mage, who bursts into tears and pleads with Lennox to let him live. Lennox covers Grime's eyes, urging him to calm down, and states that he might let him live if the mage answers his questions. Lennox then questions the mage about the group accompanying him, observing that it seems Grime has brought his entire crew, and if he seeks any potential connections. The mage interjects abruptly, indicating there likely aren't any more armed allies. Lennox finds it suitable, as no one will be tailing him on the way to the patent office. Grime then requests that he could be helpful in many ways if Lennox lets him live, claiming that he is a level 3 magic user, and at that level, many people acknowledge one as a proper mage. Lennox contemplates that he isn't what Grime means by levels, but considers that levels don't determine battles between mages. He then removes his hand from the mage's eyes, prompting him to wonder if he is letting him live. Nevertheless, Lennox puts his gun to the mage's head, while the mage's eyes well up with tears and pleads for mercy. Lennox acknowledges that he can't leave anything that could cause trouble later on, so he apologizes and shoots the mage dead. As he turns around with a heavy sigh, his attention is diverted to the werewolf, who regains consciousness. Lennox remarks that he thought he was done with him. He contemplates the potency of thunder calling and acknowledges it as the most significant force among all lightning magic. He assumes that if the werewolf were strong enough to withstand it, then it wouldn't be in this gang. Lennox discerns that the werewolf is a beast enchanted by the power of madness beneath the night sky, and because it is the nighttime, the desire for that power is what driving that dying body. Meanwhile, the beast regains its powers and lunges to attack Lennox, who skillfully evades it, prompting it to stumble on the ground. Lennox marvels at the regenerative capabilities of the beast and wonders if a mixed-blooded werewolf can exercise regenerative power of this degree just because of the moonlight, and how strong would a pure-blood werewolf be. Lennox then grasps the wolf's face bare-handed and employs the lightning bolt maneuver to assassinate it. After that, he reflects that he just took 5 minutes to dispatch both adversaries. As it's still loud outside, Lennox considers that he doesn't need to step up and help, but leaving them to fight doesn't feel right, especially when they are fighting on his side. Before heading outside, he takes Grime's staff, contemplating that Grime wasn't a strong mage, but he carried this around despite the inconvenience, therefore it must have some benefits. Lennox acknowledges that he hasn't disregarded the idea of utilizing magical accessories or supportive items, but he didn't have the money, as he already spent enough on Vipers. He then steps out of the storage room with that staff in his hand and notices that the battle between the adversaries and Amnak's mercenaries is still ongoing. He sees his comrades struggling to get the upper hand in that battle, so he raises the staff and harnesses lightning-bound magic to aid them. The lightning-bound maneuver conjures a radiant crystal ball emitting bolts of light that strike the adversaries and catch them off guard. Amid the chaos, one of the adversaries notices Grime's staff in Lennox's hand and concerns that their leader and mage have been defeated. He abruptly informs his comrades and urges them to run, prompting them to retreat without a second thought. Relieved to be alive and sensing an end to the confrontation, the mercenaries become super excited that the ordeal has concluded. Meanwhile, Lennox recognizes the group's significant efforts in the skirmish. Even though he had taken on the leader and the mage single-handedly, they were undoubtedly outnumbered. His focus shifts suddenly to the red-head guide, who appears barely conscious and exhausted. Lennox surmises that the guide must have pushed himself to the limits, indicating his determination to demonstrate the extent of his struggle. However, Lennox finds it intriguing that the guy wouldn't have survived the battle with only the power to emit flames from his arms. Moreover, he was fighting at the front, risking himself like that. Surviving the fight to bask in the joy of victory means that the guy deserved it. Lennox discerns that the red-headed guy was cornered into a dangerous situation. Therefore, he must have pushed his flame abilities past their limits. He steps towards him, considering that the guy did his job, so he doesn't need to threaten him more than he already has. Approaching the guy, he commends his efforts during the brawl. This unexpected commendation from Lennox visibly relaxes the red-headed individual, who is relieved to receive recognition for his work. After that, Lennox gazes at Grimes' staff, contemplating that it doesn't increase casting speed or mana rotation rate, and the force of the magic remains same too. He deems it trash and hurls it to the ground, observing the lack of practicality in holding onto an item that would inadvertently reveal his identity as a mage. Lennox opts against selecting any equipment that might draw unwarranted attention to his magical abilities, choosing discretion over potential exposure. He decides not to pick any equipment that would expose him as a mage. Lennox then commends the mercenaries' performance during the intense confrontation. In response, the mercenaries reciprocate the gratitude, acknowledging Lennox's role and expressing their exhilaration at emerging victorious against a formidable gang. He then directs that the uninjured should take the injured people to the hospital, and those left with only minor injuries will stay with him to guard the place for the remaining time. Later, Lennox sits alone in the warehouse and notices his trembling hands. He wonders if it's because he isn't nervous anymore. Recognizing his exhaustion, he briefly considers using a viper for an energy boost. However, due to the scarcity of vipers in his possession, he dismisses the idea, opting to preserve them just in case. After that, another day went by without any problems, and there were no additional attacks from the gang. Everyone left excited for their pay. As Lennox contemplates now that they are gone, the storage is organized and the situation report is done. All he needs to do is drop the sample off at the patent office. However, before leaving, he takes permission from AMAC higher-ups to take some medicines along. Considering his success in the mission, the authorities permit him, stating that he can take as many as he wants. He takes melatonin and tonic medicines for exhaustion, along with some vitamin supplements for his personal use. As he steps outside to depart, he notices the staff he abandoned earlier. He grasps it and decides to take it along, contemplating that if he gives it to Jenny, he can buy 1 or 2 vipers. He slings the staff over his shoulder and embarks on the journey to the patent office. Despite a persistent headache, he remains focused on completing his task, recognizing that his job isn't finished until he submits the sample. He grumbles internally about disliking errands, finding them somewhat tedious. Reflecting on his limited travels, he acknowledges that he has never ventured beyond District 10. Soon he arrives at his destination, the patent office. As he strolls around the building, he observes the serene and well-maintained surroundings, attributing the quietness to the fact that it's located in a district where the leaders of Balkan City reside. The administrative agency of the city government lives in the one-digit districts, and according to Lennox's knowledge, this area is frequented by public service employees and the city government's administrative management staff. He remarks that the patent office looks like a temple out of a myth and decides to get this over with, but before he can head inside the office, an older man who is sitting outside the patent office with his dog calls him out, pondering what brings a young man like him out here so early in the morning. Lennox responds that he's at the patent office, countering the man's assumption about what he might be doing. The man responds, speculating that Lennox must have developed some new technology and admires the fact that he's an inventor at such a young age, finding it impressive. Meanwhile, Lennox contemplates the nature of the man's presence in a place like this. He senses the man is an ordinary elder. He wonders if engaging with influential figures is wise at this stage, so he decides to navigate the situation discreetly. Lennox notices that the man isn't looking at him. Instead, he's focused on the staff. With a smirk, Lennox approaches the man and asks if he enjoyed the show he put on yesterday. With a gentle grin, the man wonders what Lennox means. Lennox informs him that he shot off some fireworks for people to watch from afar. He then addresses the man as a district representative and asks if he wasn't waiting for him because he enjoyed it. Lennox lifts the staff and firmly places it on the ground, causing a slight pothole due to the impact. He tells the man that he'll give it back to him, adding that Grime must have been a valuable mage to him, and apologizes for his death. The man responds nervously, asking whether Lennox knew. Reflecting on the situation, Lennox contemplates how he could not, as the man recognized Grimm's staff and already anticipated his arrival. Moreover, considering the man's freedom of movement in the area, Lennox concludes that he must be a district representative. Lennox adds that he never would have expected the district representative to show up instead of hiring someone else. In response, the man acknowledges that Grime was unskilled, but he was a nice person. He informs Lennox that the moment he decided to go into politics, Grime put much effort into supporting him as best as possible. Then the district representative inquires if Lennox knows the purpose behind his visit after Grimm's death, prompting Lennox to remark if he desires revenge. Meanwhile, Lennox thinks that he said that, but it doesn't seem to be the correct answer because that person's eyes don't seem to hold any hatred, disappointment, or rage. Instead, he sees intense greed. The district representative extends an offer to Lennox, proposing that it would be a loss for the entire city if someone as skilled as Lennox were to operate independently as a freelancer. Expressing certainty in Lennox's talent, the representative recalls the sight of lightning in a cloudless sky. Hence, he proposes to continue climbing the social ladder and assures that Lennox will be facilitated to become one of the tall skyscrapers as well. Lennox takes a deep sigh, recognizing that every sentence from the man reveals his self-serving ambition. He realizes that this person is unusual because he lays claim to money that isn't rightfully his, seeks fame and authority he hasn't yet earned, and desires the talents of an employee who isn't under his jurisdiction. Assessing the district representative's extreme greed, Lennox concludes that few match his level of avarice. Firm in his stance, Lennox believes he doesn't require a figurative leash around his neck and rejects the offer outright. Lennox acknowledges the man's desire to have him on board, but asserts that he has no compelling reason to align himself with the district representative. This statement takes the man aback. Deep down, Lennox contemplates that if he needs the support of someone in power, there are many more influential people than this district representative. However, turning someone as ambitious as him into an enemy would be a pain, so Lennox recognizes the necessity of managing the situation, even if he doesn't want to collaborate with the representative. Lennox then tells the man that if he helped him, he could repay that debt one day. This prompts the man to wonder what he means. In response, Lennox clarifies that they are not close, but there's no reason for them to be enemies. Later, back at the bar, Lennox narrates Jenny about the incident with the district representative. In response, she bangs on the table, stating that she heard about many weird and obsessive people in politics, but considers him worse than she imagined. When Lennox asks if she believes the man might attempt something, Jenny dismisses the concern, asserting that despite the man's oddity, his handling of the situation appears clean and professional. Jenny speculates that if the representative does indeed intend to approach Lennox in the future, it would probably be after the man has attained a higher position, assuming he's genuinely interested in collaboration. Lennox mentions the representative's apparent desperation for a mage. Jenny notes that having connections with influential individuals like him could offer various benefits if handled adeptly. She implies that dealing with such links well could provide numerous conveniences. Lennox reflects on Jenny's experiences and presumes that her life hasn't been ordinary, considering her establishment of a human resources agency and her work as a broker at a young age. Suddenly, Jenny's phone beeps, and with excitement, she tells Lennox that Emac has confirmed the registration of the sample at the patent office and has transferred the money. She offers to transfer the funds to his account, and Lennox confirms. As he prepares to depart, Jenny halts him and confirms he doesn't have any other sources of income besides this. When Lennox remains silent, she stresses the importance of establishing a credible income source to evade scrutiny. She asserts that pretense is essential because tax investigators target jobless people with significant money entering their accounts. Lennox mentions that he will look into it. Jenny clarifies that she isn't rushing him, but suggests that he should at least explore other job opportunities. As Lennox steps out of the bar, he feels fatigued and yearns to return home for some much-needed rest. However, he realizes that he needs vipers to overcome his exhaustion and function normally. So he hails a taxi and arrives at the plumber's botanical garden to acquire the vipers. The viper expert refers to him as his precious customer. He apologizes for not recognizing him earlier as an important customer, and then praises him for his remarkable talent as a mage. Remaining disguised as Van, Lennox inquires if the viper expert holds any dislike towards him. The man dismisses this suggestion, clarifying that he was merely surprised. He acknowledges that if even he disliked him, he has heard of the rumors that indicates Van has successfully adapted to this field, which he previously couldn't imagine. The viper expert then candidly admits that he didn't expect someone like Lennox, who seemingly lacks knowledge about what he is smoking, to still be alive. Lennox wonders if those were the thoughts running through the viper expert's mind the last time they met, all the while keeping a smile on his face. Nevertheless, he decides it's better to clarify. Placing the money on the table, he requests 100 of what he bought last time. A bright smile lights up the viper expert's face upon seeing this substantial amount of money, and he admits he didn't recognize Van as a young man with such a promising future. He then begins searching for the product, expressing that if Van is so wealthy, he should have disclosed it earlier. Additionally, he tells Lennox that there's something he would like to recommend to him. As he steps out of the botanical garden, exhaustion overwhelms him and he struggles to keep himself steady, sweating profusely. Seated on the ground, he resorts to using his viper and experiences a surge of vitality that makes him feel truly alive. He acknowledges that he shouldn't rely on this solution, yet feels compelled as if there's no other choice. Reflecting on his situation, he sees himself traversing a constant tightrope to survive in this harsh and unforgiving city. He had thought he was managing adequately until now, but now he wonders if he will be okay in the future. For a week after that, Lennox rested for what could be considered too much. He stretched enough to prevent becoming inflexible and prepared his meals. He kept track of his sleep hours to bring his biorhythm back to normal. Lennox acknowledges that his body is excessively sensitive and as fragile as glass, and he's tired of it. However, he believes he has somehow adjusted to this weak body. Despite all this, Lennox gets up, realizing he has to exert this much effort to secure a part-time job. He contemplates that he can't commit to something as consistent as working 3 days a week and that he can't handle night shifts. Upon reviewing his abilities, he concludes that he needs more time to find suitable employment, especially since physical labor is beyond his capabilities. Amidst this, he receives a message from Jenny asking about his plans for another quest. However, he contemplates that he has some things to research and decides to rest a bit more. Later, he arrives at the Balkan City Library in his true appearance, considering that he only goes to a few places while resting. However, he came here today with a clear purpose. Scanning the shelves, he searches for books related to summoning magic, spirit arts, and homunculus and wonders if he should explore necromancy. He carefully selects the related books and places them on the table to analyze their mechanics. He pondered a few things while fighting the werewolf and mages simultaneously that their tactic was simple. The werewolf fought in the front while the mage supported him from behind with magic. Lennox considers that possible methods to approach the battle against the dudes like them are to either be much more skilled than them and crush them in a face-to-face fight or use the same tactic as theirs to win the war slowly. He reflects that he could also kill the mage first, and that way he would get rid of the magic support. However, if he can learn summoning magic or spirit arts magic and have some support, the fights can be much more stable. He also wonders whether finding a teammate for help might be a quicker solution compared to dedicating time solely to studying these subjects. Yet he realizes the importance of assessing his capabilities. Before deciding, he delves into the study of summoning magic and observes that it involves numerous intricate conditions, resembling a complex process akin to a gacha system rather than a straightforward skill. Reflecting on its complexity, he compares it to his experiences in the game world 2.0, finding the process of specifying and executing summoning overly convoluted. Additionally, he notes that the high cost of about 200 million sell for a summoning ritual could result in an unfavorable outcome, leading to wasted time and money. Disappointed by the complexities and uncertainties in summoning, he closes the book, contemplating another potential avenue: spirit arts. Lennox considers that if using summoning magic is like playing a gacha that depends entirely on luck, spirit arts can't even be called magic. It doesn't use mana, and its principles are closer to shamanism or necromancy. Delving into that book, he remarks that nothing looks helpful and considers that this might work if he could naturally learn one while researching common magic. However, he deems it risky to invest significant time in learning this new skill. Yet he recognizes its potential, especially if he could briefly distract enemies. Suddenly, Eris, the chair professor at Labatna University, approaches him and asks if he has been rotting here all month long. Eris gently reminds him that she had requested a meeting, expressing her concern that he hasn't shown up despite her request. She questions whether burying himself in books will truly improve his situation. She sighs deeply, holding each of the books he was engrossed in, perhaps feeling disappointment and worry. Meanwhile, looking at her serious face, Lennox wonders if she is imagining scenarios and making wrong assumptions about him. Eris says that she knows he isn't talented in magic, but turning to this study isn't a good idea, especially summoning magic and spirit arts, as they depend on luck. When Lennox responds that he is aware, Eris anxiously wonders why he would continue reading about these topics if he's aware of their reliance on luck. Expressing concern, she humorously suggests that if Lennox is inclined to test his luck, buying a lottery ticket would be a better pursuit than delving into these magical arts. Disclosing her position at the university, she stresses that she has encountered only 3 spirit mages, implying that it's a futile aspiration. Lennox concedes that her perspective isn't entirely off base, and if he had been an average person, her advice would have been correct. He contemplates that he wouldn't have to listen to her lectures if he told her about himself. Eris then sits next to him, stating that she will give him a simple explanation to help him understand, and assumes that he will give up once he learns how difficult and luck-dependent summoning magic is. She begins to explain that magic is rooted in one's ideologies and the concentration of mana. As he listens, Lennox's attention begins to drift. He reflects on his awareness that Eris is a professor, yet her tone remains calm and familiar, leading him to recognize her as a good person. He is filled with a deep sense of gratitude as he acknowledges Eris's respectful approach. Realizing her passion for the subject, he reflects on the comfort and reassurance found in conversing with someone amidst the desolation of his surroundings. Having someone willing to engage with him in this solitary place brings him immense comfort and solace. Amid this, Eris suspiciously asks if he is listening, to which he assures that he is listening very closely. She then asks Lennox about his name, asserting that if someone gives him a free lecture, he should at least introduce himself. Lennox contemplates that she is one of the few who know his real face and realizes he must be careful about sharing his name. Therefore, in response, he politely questions the need to share personal details and stresses that he's merely a student engrossed in magical research at the library. Lennox emphasizes that exchanging knowledge and having discussions solely based on their shared interest in magic is adequate. Understanding his stance, Eris assumes he's willing to learn magic from her and suggests meeting every other week, assuring that she will tutor him. This leaves Lennox somewhat bewildered by her unexpected proposal. She asserts her intention to initiate instruction from foundational levels rather than plunging straight into the complexities of summoning magic, so he must be prepared. Lennox explains that he's short on time, but she disregards his concern, casually stating she'll catch up with him later as she departs. Lennox muses over her apparent disregard for his preferences, observing her tendency to follow her own inclinations without much heed to others. He ponders her peculiarity, acknowledging her inherent kindness despite her unorthodox approach. Exiting the library, Lennox reflects on Eris's inclination toward individuals lacking innate talent yet brimming with an intense passion for magic. Recollecting their initial meeting, he acknowledges his lack of knowledge about her background, recognizing that engaging with her might pose a different challenge altogether. He considers that listening to her twice a week shouldn't be bad, as being on good terms with a professor at university would help him get a good job. Lennox then inhales the Viper, contemplating that with that kind of benefit, it might be worth it to start having regularly scheduled meetings with someone since he has no one to depend on in this city. However, having to put so much thought into just meeting someone makes him a little sad. Later, arriving at the bar in his van persona, Lennox encounters Jenny, who informs him that his name will be registered in the deep web. This announcement leaves him wondering about the implications. Jenny clarifies that specific annoying processes have become remarkably efficient due to his exceptional job performance. She tells him that kind of things sometimes happens when clients are really satisfied. Lennox then asks about bartender Jordan, to which she informs him that he leaves every other week and she thinks he's helping out at his old job. Jenny then presents Van with a cocktail, but Dylan appears out of the blue and swiftly consumes it, asking what kind of cocktail this is. Jenny smacks his head, stating that it's an adios, prompting him to wonder why she did that. She yells how Dylan can sit there drinking casually after screwing up that badly on a job, to which Dylan reasons that it's their fault for slapping those ridiculous conditions on it and that he couldn't do anything alone. Meanwhile, Lennox contemplates the implications of his identity being registered on the deep web. Jenny reassures him, explaining that there's no immediate risk, emphasizing that his reputation as a successful contractor will be recognized across the network, and he can name the rewards he wants for a quest. She explains that it usually takes at least 10 months to get his name on the deep web, but it seems like his clients requested it first. Jenny mentions that maybe the customers who don't have a connection to her, don't have a means of contacting him, are getting anxious. Lennox expresses his concerns about the implications of having an identity on the deep web, to which Jenny assures him not to worry about information leaks. She explains that they use a backdoor connected to the city government's main integrated network window, ensuring perfect security. Dylan concurs with her assessment. Lennox anxiously wonders what that means, and Jenny responds that such a setup wouldn't be possible without the city government's cooperation. Lennox agrees, contemplating that this arrangement explains why the street, despite its violence, goes unchecked by the police and city government agents. He concludes that it would be more surprising if he learned that the higher-ups were involved. Jenny then inquires if there is a particular request Lennox would like to make when he receives quests. Lennox reveals his preference for rare forms of inherent magic, such as abilities related to time, space, or potent regenerative capabilities. He also expresses interest in acquiring a relic or a precious miracle drug of similar rarity and worth as magic of that caliber. Jenny questions Lennox's certainty about his preferences, highlighting the difficulty of quests that offer such rare and challenging rewards, even for someone as capable as him. Dylan interrupts, stating that it is none of Jenny's business, emphasizing that she asked him what Van wanted and he responded accordingly. He asserts that Van would have already considered any difficulties associated with the requests. Jenny concedes to Dylan's point, acknowledging that she has crossed the line and apologizes to Lennox. Lennox clarifies that he doesn't mean he will only take those quests and emphasizes that he wants to explain that those are his preferences. Jenny understands his stance and assures him that she will put in a request to edit his information. She mentions that edit requests are a slow process, so it'll take about a week. She recommends that he refrain from taking on any quests until the editing process is completed. When Lennox anxiously wonders about the reason, she informs him that there's a substantial difference in his perceived value before and after officially registering. Jenny adds once his registration is complete, there will be a significant devaluation, causing him to suffer a loss of at least 10 million in worth. Lennox lets out a heavy sigh, realizing he needs approximately 20 million sell more to afford Stimonia. Dylan notices his concern and asks if he needs money. Upon Lennox's affirmation, Dylan informs him that these days there is a job that mercenaries take on to earn some cash on the side, and Lennox can bag more than 10 million sell a day if he's good enough. Intrigued, Lennox expresses interest and asks Dylan to provide more details about this opportunity. The next day, Lennox arrives at the 50th District, the 5th observation post of the city government's Environment Management Headquarters. The place is bustling with numerous mercenaries. The registrar at the location assigns him the number 484 and instructs him to focus on the screen, informing him that they're sending people inside in groups of 4. Lennox observes that the registrar avoids eye contact and wonders why he is grouped in 4s. Nonetheless, he ponders his preference for working independently rather than being part of a group. He recalls Dylan's information about undeveloped districts beyond the 50th District, where numerous vagrants are dying due to contamination. The presence of contaminated bodies attracts beasts who also get contaminated. That's why the city government decided something needed to be done. So the city authorities have offered rewards amounting to 1 million for each of these contaminated beasts slain, which implies that by eliminating 10 of these creatures, Lennox could potentially earn 10 million. Lennox reflects on his need to accumulate more than 20 million sell. Amidst this, 3 mercenaries approach him. Surprised, Lennox inquires about their intentions.